What's going on, everybody? It's the 7th edition of Double Axis Podcast. I am going at it solo here with my man David behind the camera. What's going on, Dave?
What's up?
You sling some carbonated beverages today?
Yep.
Work hard on you?
That do life.
So I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, but I'm powering through on some Advil, cold and sinus, and a little bit of water and Monster. So hopefully I don't have any catastrophic coughing fits or anything on you today. I'm going to talk about a bunch of different things, kind of more current event stuff, something we really haven't done before, but there's a lot going on right now, and we just kind of wanted to shoot a quick podcast on some of our thoughts on it. So I think we're going to open up the show with the controversial boxing match from last weekend, which would be the Canelo Triple G fight. It was a really good fight. It's getting a black eye now because of one judge. Really, I didn't think that either one of the other judges were that off base. It's just the one judge that is kind of overshadowing what should have been, and I think that when people come back and watch it, they'll be like, well, this was a really good fight. It was a war at times. It was very strategic at times. And, just the decision really is what is kind of looming over it right now. I think that it's probably going to do close to what the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight did on pay-per-view numbers. I don't think it's going to pass McGregor versus Mayweather, obviously. But I think that the numbers are going to be really strong. We kind of talked amongst ourselves. I really didn't pay attention to the commentary or anything like that. And when the fight was over and everybody was like, do you know who won? I had no idea. I mean, I was so caught up in the moments, and there were so many razor-close rounds that it was really difficult for me to say. And then, obviously we were taken back by Miss Bird's 118-110 Canelo. But, I thought it was a very close fight. And, I feel like I got my money's worth. What, did you have a different take on it, Dave? Or
No, I agree with you. It was very close. I think Triple G won, but it was real close.
Right.
That decision she made was egregious, I thought. But it's setting up the hype for Triple G Canelo too. So.
Right. But is it really though? Because if you really look at it, and everybody digs that deep into it and says corruption in boxing, and this was a egregious decision, as you said, do you really want to watch the second one knowing that it could happen again?
I agree with that thought, but everybody's going to be a sucker and watch it again. So
but I feel like I got my money's worth though. That's what I'm saying.
It was a great fight.
I don't think we're suckers at all. I think that it's two guys. I think Triple G is hitting the edge of his prime, so I'm not sure it's two guys in their prime, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I really feel like that it could be very competitive again. I watched the fight again with no sound or anything on, and I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts and my scoring on it. Everybody knows that, everybody that watched the last podcast knows that I'm a big-time Canelo fan. He really got me reinvigorated with boxing. I love his style. I love, his how ferocious he is, his precision, and I'm starting to really appreciate his defense after Saturday night. But wanted to kind of go down my scoring of the fight. I feel like it's probably a little bit different from everybody else's, and probably I have some controversial rounds in here, but I tried to be as open-minded and kind of look at it from a fan of neither one of them, and that's hard to do a lot of times because obviously you're pulling for your guy. But I just kind of went down each round. Round one, I thought Golovkin won. I thought he won on jabs and pressure. He landed 15 punches and 13 of them were jabs. So there wasn't a whole lot of action from either side in round one, but I really feel like that pressure and those jabs won him the round. Round two, I gave to Canelo. I thought his Combos were really good. He was finished a lot of them off at the body, which I think paid dividends later on in the fight. I think it slowed Golovkin down. And he threw basically a split of 14 punches with jabs and power shots. So I thought he had a good balance. I thought it was really smart of him to be digging and ripping the body that early in the fight. And I do feel like that most of Canelo's success came to the body throughout the fight. Round 3, I gave to Golovkin on pressure and combos. Canelo seemed to be kind of slowing down, but he still landed some good combos and spurts. Golovkin actually had a better balance that round with 8 power punches and 7 jabs. Round 5, Golovkin again. I'm sorry, I skipped round 4. Come on, Dave, you're supposed to catch us. Round 4, I gave to Canelo. He had super accurate jabs to start off the round. I thought that was a great way to dictate the pace in the beginning, kind of slow Triple G's pressure down. He did really good work to the body again. He had great defense. There was times where he had his back against the ropes, but he was kind of using shoulder rolls and using his blocking skills against the ropes where, Golovkin was throwing more punches, but he was landing a lot less. He threw 61 punches and only landed 18. And I think Canelo had the more damaging punches of the round. I know a lot of people gave the 3rd round to Canelo and the 4th round to Golovkin, but that's really the way that I saw it. And if I was a judge, God forbid that day that ever comes, that's how I would have given it because, quantity's not always what's best, especially in a fist fight. Round 5 gave to Golovkin on pressure and combos. I thought it was his most effective round of the fight. At that point, he landed the most effective punch of the round with like an overhand right that caught Canelo on the ropes. And this round, I really felt like the perception of Canelo being against the ropes really made it seem like Triple G was imposing his will. Taking over the fight at that point, but it was still very close. Golovkin only outlanded him 18-14. Round 6 was just crazy close for me. I thought Golovkin won because he had more pressure and landed more power punches. I thought Canelo was landing harder and more accurate though. So that seemed to be kind of at this point, halfway through the fight, it was kind of becoming a theme. Golovkin was putting out more volume, and Canelo was landing harder and more accurate shots. Round 7 was Golovkin's most effective round of the fight, in my opinion. He landed nice combos and pressured and chased Canelo around the ring. It really seemed to me like Canelo took the round off. So I thought that was easily Golovkin's best round. Round 8. And this will probably be another one of the controversial ones. I actually gave it to Canelo. Golovkin landed more, but Canelo had some nice body work and landed 2 hard right hands, including a monster uppercut against the ropes. Golovkin had nice pressure, but it was mainly jabs, and he did land 1 left uppercut against the ropes. But it was, in my opinion, it was overshadowed by the 2 super hard, and one was a straight right and the other one was actually a uppercut against the ropes. And at this point in time, I was really starting to be very impressed by Golovkin's chin. Round 9, I thought Golovkin won on volume, had hard combos. Canelo landed the best punches of the round with an overhand hook. But it was just a really close round, amazing round. Canelo had some nice body work, and Golovkin's just got one hell of a chin. Round 10, I thought that Canelo had a blazing start. He came out just guns blazing, but I think that Golovkin stole the round as it went on. Canelo did appear to wobble Golovkin in the beginning of the round, and that could have won him the round in the minds of some people. But to me, if you wobble a guy in the beginning, you've got to keep the pressure on. You can't fade, and I really felt like the last 2 minutes he faded. And as that round went on, Golovkin seemed to get stronger. Around 11, same deal. Golovkin won on pressure and clean combos. A lot of people gave Canelo that round as well. He did have some nice punches in the round. But ultimately, I felt like Golovkin controlled it, and he landed some really clean combos in there as well. And then round 12, Canelo kind of went guns blazing. He landed much harder shots. He was making Golovkin miss a lot. And, you know, he, what do you say about it? They pretty much, they left it all out there. They were both swinging with everything that they had left. And, you know, but I felt like Canelo won.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That really made his best case for him, really did.
But, you know, still in saying that, I think I had it 8-4 here. And I think I actually misspoke. The 8th round. I'm sorry. Yeah, the 8th round was the one that the monster uppercut in the overhand right. But then in the 9th, Canelo landed a overhand and a hook, real tight in the clinch, which, once again, you know, you're looking at it and you're like, who was most effective? Yes, Golovkin pressured him and all that stuff, but Canelo had some nice body work and landed a couple good punches. So I thought it was probably 8-4. Best case scenario, 7-5 probably. Or no, I thought worst case scenario probably 8-4. Best case scenario was probably a draw. And then, you know, there's probably a possibility that it was 7-5. But in my opinion, I thought that, especially in the minds of the public, just the way that Golovkin pressured and kept him against the ropes, probably won him the fight. I got a text message about a fantasy trade in mid-sentence, mid-thought. The final punch count here, I had it. So Alvarez with 169 total punches, Golovkin with 218. Alvarez had 55 jabs, Golovkin with 108. So basically 50% of his punches were jabs, and then Canelo with 114 power punches to Golovkin's 110. So I really felt like a lot of times it was a question of quality over quantity, but I do feel like that the quantity that Golovkin was delivering in most rounds, on top of the fact that he was able to pin Canelo against the ropes, won him a lot of those. I feel like Canelo was obviously the most effective when he was in the middle of the ring, firing back. I thought he used amazing defense. I was really impressed with his defense. Super impressed with Golovkin's chin. I mean, my gosh, the dude took a couple bombs and just kept on coming. Canelo seemed to start off the rounds really well and then fade as they went on. It seemed like he took a couple rounds off. And I think, once again, if you watched the podcast where we kind of broke down Mayweather versus McGregor, I talked about McGregor throwing like a lot of volume, but didn't really have anything behind him, and I thought he was wasting energy. And Canelo was kind of the opposite. He didn't throw a lot of volume, but everything he threw, he had everything behind it. And perhaps a couple of his punches he should have took a little bit off of to try to set something else up. And it didn't seem like he followed up when he actually hurt the body of Golovkin. I thought he hurt the body a couple times, but didn't follow it up with anything, just paused, and I think a lot of that was probably due to energy. Is that pretty much your take on it as well, or did you have...
When you start talking about quality versus quantity, I can kind of see the breakdown to where it could have been a draw, but I still just don't get Bird's take on.
Yeah. I don't think anybody does.
But I can see where you're coming from. That's actually, you know, almost swayed my opinion. Of course, I was like 7 natty lights in at that point.
Yeah. But you know, I just don't see a scenario where Canelo won. I just feel like that the perception of him with his back against the ropes is too much to overcome. And Golovkin, you know, it might have worked if Golovkin wasn't throwing such a high volume.
Yeah.
If Canelo had his back against the ropes and he was avoiding the shots and then firing back and kind of keeping pace with the volume, maybe that would have worked. But Canelo seemed to be comfortable with letting him punch and using blocking and trying to exit. But he ultimately ended up against the ropes again. So I don't see a scenario where Canelo won. Like I said, best case scenario, a draw, but it was probably 7-5, 8-4, somewhere along the lines of that. And you're talking about a rematch, and obviously, I want to see it. I thought it was a great fight. I hate that it's overshadowed by all this stuff. I think they would have rematched no matter what. I think it was a close enough fight, and it had its moments, and everybody just anticipated it for so long. And I think that we really didn't get to see the optimum fight possible because I feel like Golovkin's slipping a little bit from the highlights and stuff that I've seen. And maybe it's just Canelo's that good. Maybe Golovkin's not slipping. Maybe Canelo's just that good. But Canelo has to do something serious about his cardio issues. I mean, I've seen him fade before. I've seen him take off rounds, but he can usually make it up because he's so much better than everybody else. He's not that much better than Golovkin. He's faster. I think he hits harder. He's obviously younger. But Golovkin is just a nasty dude. He's got a great chin. He keeps the pressure on. So, Canelo's not going to be able to use his talent to beat this guy. He's going to have to get in some serious shape, and he's going to have to not let Golovkin take the center of the ring and push him against the ropes and things like that. Because if he can't knock Triple G out, then I think we're going to run into the same scenario if he doesn't change. But in the rematch, my money would be on Canelo all day.
Yeah, I think so as well.
I see it kind of like the Andre Ward Kovalev fight. Andre Ward, it was a really close decision despite the fact that Ward won that. When in the rematch, Ward was able to put him away. And I think Canelo, being the younger guy, he was faster. He looked more powerful. I think if he had just controlled his cardio issues, I think he would have ran away with the fight personally. Because, like I said, I think he was landing more quality shots. They're much cleaner. So that was my take.
There, the last round.
Yeah, but I mean,
just left it all out in the ring.
Well, that's because
I admired that about.
That's because his corner was telling him you have to pretty much go knock this guy out, and then he was acting like he won.
Yeah.
And I'm sure being in his position, kind of knowing his strategy or what it seemed like his strategy was, he might have thought he won, but that just wasn't my opinion. Like I said, draw at best, but probably 7-5, 8-4. So
yeah.
So what else? What else we got here?
Well, let's get into the football subject. I know we want to talk about a few things. We'll start off with Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah. So you read a little bit more into it than me. So tell me your take on it.
Well, I was reading. There's a conclusion that not a conclusion, but it's kind of set out there. Like you pick your own conclusion. But I was reading a story where it said a doctor examined his brain and said that he had some CTE worse than he'd seen than any player, that he's looked at a lot of players' brains, and he looked at his and he said it was the worst, and he had looked like a 60-year-old Alzheimer's patient. That's pretty much what I was reading.
So did it basically say whether this doctor was a respected opinion?
That's the part I didn't get. The story I was reading, the first few I came across were kind of the stories kind of seemed like that they were making that as an excuse for
what happened.
Yeah, for what happened, him committing suicide, and perhaps maybe his violent tendencies, but even before then. But that's something I kind of have a hard time believing.
Yeah.
He's got a violent past going back to when he was a freshman at Florida.
Yeah,
and even
for sure.
Before then.
For sure.
Because he's a juvenile.
I would like to see more doctors study his brain, and that way that you can reach conclusions. I'm sure that this doctor was probably handpicked by the attorneys of the Hernandez family, and that's just hard to say. But I think it sets a precedent moving forward because I think that even going back to O.J. Simpson, his lawyers kind of hinted at the possibility of CTE in his life, which is definitely something that could be possible. But I think that this is a very important case because I honestly believe it's going to set a precedent moving forward, and I think it needs to be something that the doctors take very seriously, and multiple doctors need to look at it to determine if this is the truth, what the one doctor's saying. I still don't think that that's a viable excuse or option for the Hernandez family to say, hey, this guy murdered 3 people and then ultimately killed himself, and it was all because of CTE. But because like you said, he had a history of violence even before that. So, but I think it's going to be something valuable moving forward, so that not only players themselves, but physicians and the NFL can know how to treat the situation, to keep this from happening again. If this is actually what happened, if it played a factor in it at all.
I kind of wonder what the NFL, what their move is going to be. I mean, they've done a lot to improve like concussion protocol and things like that, but it kind of makes you wonder where it's going to, how it's going to affect the game later going on.
Right. And you basically hinted at that you thought that was one of the factors of the ratings going down.
Not the ratings, but I've read a lot of stories.
It has to play a factor in it.
I'm sure it does, but I don't think it does a whole lot. I think it has more to do with the future and getting kids to play football. I've read a lot into it. There's football teams that, where they used to have, high schools would have like 3 squads and stuff, and now I'm reading stories where they're struggling to fill one. And I was reading another one that Little League football, it's pretty much dying out.
Right.
People are likening it to, or comparing it to smoking cigarettes, letting your children, go light up a cigarette outside. That's what they're comparing it to.
Right.
And it's hard not to, from what everything that we see and we hear in the news.
Yeah, I for sure agree with that. If I had a son, it would be something that I would have to factor into it. But ultimately, I think that people are going to make their own decisions. You mentioned smoking. It's just like smoking, so to speak. People have to make their own decisions on that stuff. We still live in America after all, and people make millions of dollars doing this. And I think that by doing studies on it and understanding it a little bit more, perhaps they can even cut back on it in the sport by making, different helmets or whatever it may be. Maybe changing the padding. I mean, I feel like there's lots of options.
I'm sure that's something that they've tinkered around with as well.
Yeah. But, I do feel like it has to play. Even if it's minor, I feel like there has to be some effect on the ratings, because maybe it's because I listen to too much sports radio, which I've cut back tremendously over the past couple of years compared to what I used to do. But it's always in the back of my mind, and every time I see a crazy collision or I see a player go down or whatever it may be, I definitely think about it, and also think about it in the light of combat sports, because obviously this podcast, we talk about combat sports a lot, and it has to play a factor. But if it's as traumatic as the NFL and the continuous beating that they take, I'm not sure, because there are processes in place for when a fighter gets knocked out or goes through a very hard fight that that they take suspensions. These guys, a lot of them probably have concussions that don't even know it, that are going back out there and playing the next week.
They'll cover it up because it's a team mentality.
Right.
Like they're talking about, Joe Thomas mentioned, I don't think he mentioned anything about concussions, but he said that he came out and played through all these injuries that he didn't want to,
right. And I mean, like you mentioned, like, I don't know if you call it Little League or Pee Wee football, but
just in general.
Going back to even there, I mean, I remember times where, in baseball or basketball, I got banged up and I didn't admit it. I just kept on going, and I know that there's kids that do the same thing in football. So it's just part of the human nature. It's part of our competitive spirits for those that pursue athletics, and I don't think it's going to change. So, I'm very interested to see the way that it all plays out, and I feel like because it's Aaron Hernandez, it's going to play so much of a bigger role, because when Junior Seau committed suicide, that was a big deal too.
That was a huge deal.
But it went away pretty fast, and this Hernandez situation, because of everything leading up to it, I feel like could play a bigger factor in the entire CTE scandal. and could really set precedent for the NFL moving forward for violence amongst players. You know, you have all these domestic issues and everything else at home. I mean, how much of that plays a role into it? And I mean, I would love for somebody to study O.J. Simpson's brain,
Yeah.
and see what's going on there. I mean, it's just basically open up a can of worms, and it's went everywhere.
Now, kind of like you said, I wonder how I'd like to see an independent doctor look at it, because I'm sure
Right.
the doctors
Yeah.
got his pocket.
And it needs to be independent. It doesn't need to be
Yeah.
NFL, and it doesn't need to be
No.
these attorneys. It needs to be people that have no stake in it at all. It needs to be somebody that is going to be able to give us an honest opinion, because it's going to affect the lives of everybody that's ever been in the NFL, that everybody in the future in the NFL, and everybody in the current NFL. So, kind of touching a little bit more on ratings. Obviously, it's a big problem right now. So, do you think that it's all in the protests and stuff like that,
Well,
or do you
I
feel like
think
the
that's a
product's
huge part
slipping? Or
of it. Well, I think that we live in a. People think that quarterback competition and stuff isn't as steep as it has been, but I disagree with that. That's one thing that I've heard. But I tend to believe with the activism part. The country's so polarized right now. You have extreme, to the left, and you have extreme to the right. Everybody's want to take their teams, and both of those extremes are kind of, pissed off at the NFL for, going one way or the other way.
right,
And the Kaepernick thing, from both of those camps, I think it's hurt a lot of the ratings, I think.
right. Well, I have several different thoughts on that. I'll give my thoughts on the ratings, to kind of close up my point. But the activism thing, it's just kind of amazing to me. Not just in sports, but politics and everything else. If people just shut off their TV and didn't let themselves be swayed by whoever's opinion may be, I mean, just ignore it. I mean, it's the same thing when they were tearing those statues down. You're giving these people a platform that shouldn't have a platform. Like, if they want to sit down on the sidelines, I don't agree with it, but I definitely don't think these networks should be putting it up on TV and making such a big deal out of it. As far as the Kaepernick situation goes, everybody can say what they want, but I mean, your eyes don't lie. He wasn't winning football games. And, to kind of give a counterbalance to that, Tebow was winning football games.
Yeah.
He was winning playoff games, and he got the boot because he was bringing in too much attention as well.
Yeah, they're both polarizing figures, and teams don't really want that from their backup. They don't want, because then it kind of brings the question of if their starter starts struggling just because he's a big name, then that's going to create a controversy.
Right.
There'll always be a controversy.
Right.
Yeah.
And
that's
I
why
don't think a lot.
I
I think a lot of these teams are just wanting to rebuild.
Yeah.
Last night was a great game. It was one of the better primetime games this year, in my opinion. And you didn't have any of that controversy. It was just about the game. And if he was there, they'd be showing him on the sideline. Every time Hoyer threw a pick or did something stupid, they'd be like, "Oh, put Kaepernick in." And it was more about the teams. It was more about the game, and it lets you kind of put these new people in the spotlight, like Carlos Hyde. He's running hard, having a good game. Todd Gurley running hard, having a good game, and I feel like it would take away from the product itself. And those two obviously aren't the two biggest names in the NFL right now, but I really feel like that was a good game, and I feel like that's one of the biggest problems that the NFL has. They just keep putting on boring game after boring game, but in my opinion, the ratings started slipping during the Tom Brady witch hunt. If you think back, they kind of go hand in hand, and I know it certainly put a bad taste in my mouth that they went after him so hard, and it just kind of left a black cloud over it. And I really feel like that was the beginning of the decline. I know that's everybody thinks the anthem protests were, but I really think that was the moment, because now you have these other cases like Ezekiel Elliott, and these people seem to have done far worse things in their lives, and yet Elliott's out there playing every game, and Brady sitting on the bench for something that supposedly might have happened.
Yeah, I understand where he's trying to protect the integrity of the NFL. It's going to be known as a league full of, like, you know, alleged cheaters or wife beaters or
Right.
things like that. But at the same time, what if, like at my job, I can't imagine if my boss came in and he's like, well, I heard this and this may have happened.
Right.
We're going to have an independent team look
Right.
at it. And then the police aren't doing anything because there's no probable cause.
Right.
But they're going to come after me and the money I'm going to make. And, that's the part that seems ridiculous to me. But at the same time, I can kind of see where they don't want the NFL to be known as, a league of thugs or something,
Right.
or lawlessness.
Well, I mean,
So I kind of see both sides of it.
for sure. I don't get it. I think that the national anthem protests shouldn't be shown in the light that they were. I feel like it's really hurt Kaepernick by putting all this up there and making such a big deal about it. Like you said, it makes him more polarizing figure, and he didn't really do that stuff.
Until he starts struggling.
Right.
That's what I think.
He didn't really do it until he started struggling, and then next thing you know, he's an activist. And I mean, I think he does do a lot of good things because it seems like he donates a lot of the money to charity and stuff like that. But all of these things that he's saying is completely different from his upbringing altogether. He lived a suburban life. And it's great that he wants to be an activist, but it's all about the way that you go about things and the tact that you have behind it. And he went about it poorly. The coverage went about it poorly, and it's hurt him in the end. And I think it's the reason he doesn't have a job, because people don't just look at him, for his talent anymore. It's like you said, it's everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, if he had, I don't have any problem with people using their platform.
No,
for
not at all.
Even if I disagree with it, 'cause it's the country we live in. Everybody thinks different than
Right. But it's all about the way you go about it.
Yeah, that's like. I agree with that because he didn't start doing it till.
Yeah, it was really bad timing. And,
horrible timing.
Yeah, so.
But people seem to forget that when you hear the nonstop, 24-hour coverage of the story, even though it happened last season.
I think the most important part about the media is to remember that it's not just your local guy that's trying to give you an unbiased take on the news for your information and to better your life. It's all about making money now. It's about ratings
and there's no
and
ratings
money.
in unbiased.
Right, and there's no ratings and just reporting it and just trying to let people live their lives and let the stories play out and let the games be the games and let the players be the players. They have to build everything up to sell their programming, and that's the downfall of it all. You can't turn on the news, whatever station it may be, without getting their biased opinion. And now, on top of everything else, ESPN's reporting politics, and it's just.
Well, they're not really reporting politics. If she used her ESPN Twitter.
Oh, I'm not talking about her
okay.
individually. No, I'm talking about as a whole. Like you can't really watch ESPN anymore without some type of political rhetoric or whatever. And people just want to, in my opinion, people just want to turn the sports on, watch the games, and let them speak for themselves. Right.
From and then they're starting to cross lines.
Yep.
There's these extreme camps, like I was saying. They're always mad. They're always looking for something to be angry at. They're always looking for the next thing to get mad at.
For sure.
And I think that they sit and watch the news and wait for it, and that hype brings in their ratings.
Yeah, and then social media just adds fuel to the fire. Yeah. So that's enough of that nonsense.
Yeah.
Do you have any surprises so far for like the NFL season?
My biggest surprise, I think that the Bengals,
how terrible they are.
No touchdowns. They've been at home their first 2 games and no touchdowns. That really surprises me because I'm always waiting. I think it's the coaching, really. Marvin Lewis, he's just been there too long.
Right. And that can happen. It can get stale. My biggest surprise has been the Cowboys, how ineffective they've been. I expected them to be kind of carry over the heat that they had. And I was talking to Tyrell today, and we were talking about our podcast and my opinion that people's personal lives can bleed over into their professional lives. And I think he's kind of starting to see the light, especially with as bad of a game as Elliott had and the fact that, on the interceptions he wasn't hustling and stuff like that. And, it just goes to show you, man. I really believe in that formula. I think that if a person is like a bad person and then they do some silly things and it crosses over, then it can kind of bleed over to the team because the team was probably preparing to go forward without Elliott. Who knows if he was in shape? Who knows if he was getting the first team reps? And now you got Darren McFadden not even playing, or it's just a mess in Dallas. And I'm really surprised by that because I think Dak's the best player on the team. I don't think it's Elliott.
Yeah, I think so as well.
And you know they can't seem to kind of get Des Bryant going either, and that's frustrating to me because he's a guy that came in the league and had a bad reputation, and he seems to kind of put a top on that. And injuries and other things have seemed to derail him as opposed to just being a wild, crazy guy.
Yeah, I think a lot of his teammates humbled him too when he was fresh in the league from all the stories.
I think they had like a Full Metal Jacket moment where somebody pulled the blankets down, they all hit him.
Jason Witten just comes in and beating on him.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's been my biggest surprise. Obviously, the Patriots getting torched week 1, but I think that was the best thing to happen to them.
Well, the Chiefs are, perennially, they're
perennial and an okay team.
They're the most underrated NFL team, I think.
Yes and no. I mean, anybody that's watched the AFC and been kind of as deep in the playoffs and stuff as I have been over the last 3 or 4 years, especially with the emergence of Luck and kind of not having a local team and trying to watch the Colts as a local team, and of course trying to enjoy Tom Brady's twilight years.
There's a local team right over the river,
The Bengals?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like being a Reds fan. You saw on what was that, Monday night? You saw what being a Bengals fan gets you. So I've never tried to be a Bengals fan ever.
Me either.
I've been trying to be persuaded to be a Browns fan for a really long time, but that's more silly than being a Bengals fan. I hope it does happen, man.
I don't know.
I really hope it does happen because, I'm tired of seeing you and the Shahans and Mike Fishman cry every year.
Yeah.
So I really hope it does happen.
At least Mike and I have realistic expectations.
Maybe now. Back in the day, I had Baylor in one ear and Mike in the other ear telling me that the Browns are going to make the playoffs and that they barely won a game every year. So, yeah.
He's been doing pretty good for his first year, just thrown to the fire.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's all you can say about a Browns quarterback is that they're thrown in the fire.
He's not dead yet.
I saw him take that slide and that dude catch him a knee in his head, and my dad was actually over watching the game with me. And I said, man, he's going to be lucky if he doesn't have a concussion. And the next thing you know, he's out of the game with a migraine. I was like, I told you. My dad was like, I didn't even see it. I was like, yeah, he took a knee to the head. So, as far as fantasy goes, how you feeling about that so far?
Pretty bad.
Pretty bad?
Yeah, really bad.
Yeah.
I think week 1, I may have had my entire team had 1 touchdown.
Yeah, same here.
That was from a Cam Newton pass, maybe. I can't remember.
Which is probably his only touchdown pass of the year.
Yeah,
right.
He's been doing really awful for me. Hopefully things change around this week. I think they play the Bengals.
I think he came back too soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what I thought last year because he struggled.
I think he came back too soon because he relies so much on his legs. But I think that, the accuracy and stuff that you're talking about, I think it was this weekend or last weekend. I think that those problems that he's having probably relates to him coming back too soon and not giving that arm enough time because, you see the process that it's taking Luck to get back. And obviously he relies on his arm a lot more. I think that's really hindering Cam right now. I think he should have gave it a little bit more time and nursed that and kind of ease back into it because now he's taking off days in the week instead of just taking off more time up front and being able to kind of go at it full steam.
The Panthers, they're notorious for that. This player management, I guess, is the way they see it.
Well, like we were talking about earlier, even if he's hurt and he's bothered by it, I'm sure he's not going to tell anybody.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because he wants to be out there on the field. So.
That guy gets hit harder and worse than almost anybody. And
oh, yeah.
No flags.
I got Carson Wentz on my bench if you need a quarterback.
I got Phillip Rivers.
Oh, yeah.
He's been doing very well, too.
Yeah.
Sitting on my bench.
Yeah, they're going to be scoring a lot of touchdowns, I'd say. Um, I've kind of been injury plagued so far this year. Obviously, in talking my last podcast, I go running backs first. I'm absolutely horrified that I didn't take Melvin Gordon now with the success that he's having, because I could have Melvin Gordon or I'm sorry, I didn't take Todd Gurley. I could have Melvin Gordon and Todd Gurley there at the top. But obviously, Brady putting up 42 points last week was a big help. So,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, my top two, all the wide receivers in our draft went right away because it was all auto pick. And by the time I got a wide receiver, I ended up with Allen Robinson and Cam Meredith and Jordan Matthews. And obviously, Allen Robinson and Cam Meredith are hurt now, so that left me with trying to put a trade together, which I was able to do to get Michael Thomas, and he's underperformed. And now I'm trying to fill in that extra spot, that second spot of my wide receivers, and it's not working out well for me.
Nelson off the waivers.
I know. I put in a.
Oh, did you? Sunday before the game, I put in one and my browser crashed on this crappy phone. And I thought it was a sign. The very first play, you got a touchdown, or very first drive.
Yeah.
And then I cried.
Oh, because
I didn't pick it.
Yeah,
up.
because you didn't get him in time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that sucks. But you had I think you had the wave before me, right before me.
Probably.
So, but I was able to get Chris Thompson, which I'm kind of happy with, as good as he looks and as bad as Rob Kelly kind of looks. So, but I'm not sure that he's going to get the touches that kind of pull me to the light. But I'm interested to see how it works out, and I can't wait to get Doug Martin back because he looked awesome in preseason. So hope he's still good.
I think the Buccaneers are going to be the surprise team. They always pick from that division.
Yeah, but I don't know if they're a surprise team,
Yeah,
especially because they were on Hard Knocks and everything else.
I forgot all about the Hard Knocks stuff.
So everybody's kind of on that train.
Yeah.
Step off of it, David. What you got next?
We kind of talked about fantasy football a little bit, so we'll talk about the Kevin Durant saga.
Oh, okay. So, I always try to, after Jordan left, it left such a void in my life that I've always tried to have, my guy and then, an emerging guy that I can watch. So, obviously, when Jordan left, Kobe became my guy, and I was trying to find somebody else to try to watch and follow. So, KD became that guy, with his big kind of run in Texas and going to the Sonics. I love the Sonics uniforms, and then eventually ended up in OKC. So, he was my guy for a really long time, and, kind of the way it all went down in OKC, it left a really bitter taste in my mouth, and I literally had KD shoes, KD shirts, and they all went away. So, I don't have a very high opinion on it, but you want to kind of tell people what went down?
We can talk about the Twitter stuff first, because I think this is funny.
What else is there to talk about?
Well, I can talk about
it all evolves around Twitter, right?
Yeah, and I guess we branch off from there. But he was using an account, I guess, like a fake account.
Multiple.
That he used to respond to people criticizing him. I guess he forgot to log out.
And he
still denies that it's, that he said he meant to do it on his personal account. I don't know. Probably not. But
probably not, yeah.
And he goes on to criticize Billy Donovan and the roster and making that as reasons for leaving. Both are awful reasons. Maybe not the roster too much. I think in his tweet he mentioned it was just him and Russ. Which, you can make an argument for that, but the Billy Donovan thing, that probably went too far, I think.
Yeah.
He's arguably
the best college coach.
Top 3 NBA coaches right now with what what he's done. Even that year, Durant's last year.
Right.
Durant said the roster was bad, but that last year they made a pretty good run against the Warriors because they were having all their support guys just come out and do crazy stuff. I think Roberson had a few good games. You had Steven Adams emerging into what he is now.
Well, in that series, and this is kind of what I circle back to.
Yeah.
In that series, if Durant had played as hard as he did this year against the Cavs when he won the MVP, then they might have been able to beat the Warriors. But he didn't give that effort, and he flat out disappeared at times in that series. And so if he wants to point the finger at anybody, and maybe that's the reason he's pointing the finger at people, he should really point at himself. Because I will contend until the day I die, if he put it the effort forth that he had this year against the Warriors the year before, and probably even the year before that, it would have been a different series.
Yeah, it was 3-1. It felt like he wasn't even playing at times.
Right.
It was, Westbrook show like it is now, like it was when Durant was hurt.
Right.
And of course, don't feel, I've always been an OKC fan, and, well, not always, but, things are pretty good. You got Westbrook still.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I love Westbrook, and it's kind of like the reason I started liking Kobe is because I actually started watching for Shaq. Shaq got traded. I remember my parents bought me a sweet Lakers jersey, and so I was watching the Lakers for Shaq, and I'm like, who's this dude? And so I kind of went more towards Kobe, and that's kind of the same thing that happened, even though I remember countlessly defending Russ to a bunch of our friends about, everybody's like he's selfish and blah, blah, blah. And
I was on that wagon. Yeah, I thought that, they should have kept Harden and got rid of him.
Yeah.
Even though Harden is really good and he's putting up, phenomenal. You could compare them. They're close, but I still think Russ is better.
Right, yeah. But I was continuously defending him. And I really started to become a Russ fan after a while. And I hated the way it went down. And I feel like, excuse me, I feel like that it's really overshadowing the whole Warriors finals and his MVP performance, because now he's doing all this crazy stuff on Twitter. He's kind of talked crap about Under Armour, which is Curry's brand. And
I think that was more like a friendly jab to Steph.
Yeah, but then the Warriors front office said that they're baffled by his offseason. So
there's got to be. They think that all this stuff's gotten to his head where he had to make a real tough decision to go to Golden State. I think the whole super team NBA stuff, I hate it.
I hate it too.
But I can kind of see, the opportunity. He didn't want to be like, Iverson Charles Barkley, or if you want to be the best player or be known, because one of the arguments that was against LeBron when people had the LeBron-Kobe debates all the time was LeBron doesn't have the ring, and I think that's kind of one of the reasons LeBron, went to Miami.
Right, obviously.
Became just a ring seeker, and I think that's what Durant. We'll see what he does in 2 years whenever his contract's up, or after next season. I think it's when it's up. They get an extension this year. If he goes to the Lakers or wherever LeBron's at, or
right.
It'd be interesting to see.
But kind of to your point, though, Iverson and Barkley are beloved, and they're respected for.
And Durant was too before he decided.
Right, and I think that no matter what happens, they'll always say you had to go to the Warriors to win.
Yeah.
And that's going to affect Durant for the foreseeable future, without
Durant
a doubt.
Was so beloved before that I think it was the Oklahoma. Might have been like 2015 or 14. Posted like a front page post, and it was like Mr. Unreliable or something like that, or Mr. No Show, and they had to issue an apology for it like a week or a couple days later,
right? Because
of the controversy it did. But
I really hope that Russ and Paul George work out.
I hope
personally.
so too. It's kind of hard to say what the Thunder's future will be like.
Yeah, if Russ leaves leaves, it may cave the whole team in. They may have to go back to Seattle.
Yeah, but then Billy Donovan might go back to Florida. That would be cool for Yankee fans.
Yeah, for sure. What else you got?
Let's talk about your pick results. I think that's what we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, not good. Not good. So. Obviously, the Mighty Mouse Borg fight got scrapped last minute, and I had 3 picks on that card, and I went 0 for 3. So they weren't good. I think those fights were. I picked Shevchenko over Nunez for sure. I picked Neil Magny over Dos Anjos, and then finally Melendez over Stevenson. And The Nunez fight was kind of a close one that was a little bit controversial, but the other two fights were just beatdowns in the wrong direction for me. So that put me to 6-6 at that point, and then the David Branch and Rockhold fight. Branch came out really strong, and I was sincerely scared that I was going to fall below 500 there, but Rockhold was able to kind of pull out the victory. In those results, though, Dos Anjos was, like I said, I was afraid that he was going to be kind of the smaller guy and basically not be able to control the fight, but he basically kicked Magny's legs out from under him, got on top of him, and just mangled him. So I was very wrong about that. So perhaps Dos Anjos was just cutting too much weight, and now at 170, he's going to be able to be a factor. The Melendez fight and Stevenson fight, I was completely wrong once again. Stevenson just beat up Melendez's legs. It was really brutal. I didn't actually watch the pay-per-view, but I did watch highlights of everything and saw his legs after the fact, and it was just horrible. So went 0-2 for those, and then the Nunez-Shevchenko fight became the main event, and it was a really close fight. A lot of people said that the judges might have got it wrong, but when you don't put the champion away and you don't kind of do something to make yourself stand out, then you leave the door open for the champion to kind of win a decision, and I think that's probably what happened. The Branch Rockhold fight, I was super impressed with the way the Branch came out. I think he, kind of put it on Rockhold in the early moments, but then Rockhold's experience kind of took over, and he was able to kind of get Branch down and finish him. Branch really gave up in the end, and I'm not really sure how much. I feel like he had a good moment there at the beginning of the fight, and he probably could have rode that momentum and been like, yeah, you lost to the former champion or whatever it may be. But I feel like the way that the fight ended with, him basically giving up and Rockhold, well, he did give up, he tapped. And Rockhold pounding on him, that I feel like it's going to kind of not give him a very good future. But I didn't think Rockhold looked good at all, personally. I thought he was kind of cocky, kind of like the Bisping fight, and then, his after-fight antics. He's just trying to get the shot at the title, so... But I did get that pick right, which brought me back to 7-6, which is still a horrible record. So, with Bellator on the door tomorrow, hopefully I'll maybe sweep that and get my record back in the black. So, is that what you want to talk about next, Bellator?
Yeah, we talk about Bellator.
Super excited for that card tomorrow night. We obviously kind of did a breakdown on it. With the three big fights, and I can't wait for it. I think it's going to be a very good card, and like I said, hopefully I'll kind of get my record back in the black. The Nelson-Ayala fight, I think that's just a purely entertainment fight. They may be able to do something with Nelson after the fact, but the Lorenz Larkin-Paul Daly fight has, pretty big title implications, and now that you have Lima versus McDonald announced, which is going to be happening in January, I believe, which is a title fight for the 170-pound belt. Either one of those guys could make a name if they finish the fight strong for the title shot. Even though I think that Koreshkov should be the next guy up there, it just leaves a lot of interesting scenarios for Bellator at 170 pounds. And then in the main event, you got Pitbull versus Ben Henderson. And I think that after Chandler gets his rematch and probably takes the title, I think that the winner of those two guys probably gets the next chance at 155 pounds. So, there's a lot on the line tomorrow, and it's a great card for free TV, and I can't wait to watch it personally. So, you got anything else, bud?
Do you want to go over the Lima McDonald fight?
Yeah, kind of hit on it a little bit there. I'm super excited for that fight. I'm not going to make a pick just yet, even though I don't know who I'm going to pick. I really want to see how that card fills out. That way we can hopefully do a show on it. But I just think that Bellator is really on the rise with all these fights that they're making. They're making the fights that the fans want to see, in my opinion. And like we talked about before, the UFC is really struggling with that. I feel like the last two pay-per-views, this one coming up, and then UFC 215, I feel like they're definitely going to fall flat. in the eyes of many fans. I know that I'm not personally excited about the cards enough to pay for it, even though the Ferguson-Lee fight is a very interesting fight. I just feel like UFC's excuse me, is not really making the matchups right now, and I feel like Bellator is. So I'm super pumped for the fights tomorrow, and I feel like that it's going to lead into giving a clearer future. And if Bellator keeps putting out fights like Lehman versus McDonald, which is a crazy awesome fight, McDonald's just destroyed people since he came to Bellator. And I think it makes for a really interesting future. And tomorrow night kind of sets up how it's going to pivot after that Lehman McDonald fight, because it gives you the next contenders, perhaps. So, got anything else, bud?
That's it. That's all we got. Do you have any final thoughts or anything else you want to do?
No, I think that's it. We're still trying to get the Bionic Man, Matt Bradford, kind of locked down to a date, but he's definitely been talking about it quite a bit, and I know we're both super pumped for that. So that's going to be coming up in the future. Going to try to do another hunting podcast, perhaps with a guest this time. So kind of break that down. There's a lot to talk about in hunting, so to speak, because there's a disease right now in Kentucky called EHA that's killing a lot of the deer herd, and one of the deer was actually found close to our farm, was found dead, and then several in the surrounding counties.
Wow.
So
it was like originally just really got further east, was it?
Yeah, it was eastern Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
Eastern Kentucky, yeah.
Yeah, they were talking about it on, I think, Kentucky Fields. Good show.
Yeah, there's some counties that have over 100 deer that
Yeah.
have been found dead, and Clark County is just like in the 8 to 10 range right now. Hopefully less than that. But
I was reading though on that, even though like archery season's been better than
yeah.
than ever, so it's kind of a weird thing.
Well, Kentucky's definitely in an upswing, and there's a lot of professional hunters that are starting to take more notice, and I think that the money and stuff that's pouring in is helping out with the deer herds. I mean, this is up to the date. If we haven't lost any deer, this is the most bucks that we've ever had, and we still don't have a lot of does, but it's the most bucks we've ever had on our farm. And I really feel like that's all the work that we put in. But if it comes through and devastates the deer herd, then it's going to be a really bad setback that we're going to have to build up from.
Yeah,
So.
but deer real. They'll bounce back and
But it's going to take several years, especially like the deer that was found dead the farm over. It was an older deer, and it may just died hopefully from old age. But if it did kill that one, it's going to take 5 years for another deer to get back to that point. So
what were they saying was the symptoms? Was it the tongue?
no, it's a bot fly that bites them,
Yeah.
and I guess the larva spreads in. I think it's in. Like their brain area, because I've seen a lot of guys that are actually cutting them out of the nasal cavity. And so, it looks like a giant slug basically, and it basically just goes in and begins to eat their brain, I believe.
Yeah, this would be a good topic to do, like he says.
Yeah, so we'll break that down. Hopefully, have a guest on. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. David did awesome today to kind of help me. I was struggling pretty bad, so. Hopefully next time I won't get a cold, and we'll be able to deliver you a good product with hopefully Matt next. But if not, then we're going to do another hunting one. And I guess if the sports keep being as hot as they are right now, all the different topics, we'll probably have to do another one on that too.
Hopefully the Cats end their streak tomorrow. This will be up by then. So.
Against Florida?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not.
After then,
yeah, the internet's actually down right now at my house, so I gotta go.
Future me may be pretty sad.
By the time this is released, future David will be pretty sad. So, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Go check out our social media pages. I'm gonna take a picture in a couple minutes and get our new setup, because it's we're stepping up the production game here. We got some lights and some fancy stuff going on, and I guess one of our mics is bad, so we're going to have to buy another mic. So, things are progressing pretty fast here.
Yeah, we do part-time portrait work, too.
It's kind of like the Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
I guess you can say things are getting pretty serious. So.
But glamour shots.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Double Axis Podcast, and we'll see you guys the next go-around. Thanks.